I wasn't expecting visitors that Thursday afternoon. The Portland rain tapped gently on the window of my apartment, the same one I'd worked a decade to afford. It's modest, but it has a view of the Willamette River and just enough stillness to remind me I made it, my world, my pace. Then came the knock. When I opened the door, I wasn't surprised to find Gregory and Isabel standing there, umbrella-dripping eyes, already assessing everything like it belonged to them. My father's expression held the same worn-out disappointment he used to carry when I came home with A's instead of A+. Isabel's smile wasn't real. It never was. I let them in. Out of habit or weakness? I'm still not sure. They didn't bother with pleasantries. Gregory walked around like he was inspecting an investment property. Isabel leaned against the counter like she owned it. I'm Ethan, 34. I manage systems infrastructure for a medical tech company, 6 figures benefits security. Everything I built was with my own hands, no shortcuts, no gifts. But none of that mattered to them. Gregory got to the point. We're concerned. Your sister has a new opportunity, a startup she's passionate about. He looked at me the way he used to when he wanted me to fix the Wi-Fi, like I owed him a solution, Isabel added. We just need a little help. Family helps family. I've heard those words since I was a kid. Back when helping meant giving up my birthday money so she could buy new ballet shoes. Back when helping meant skipping field trips so the real prodigy could shine, uninterrupted. They weren't asking. They were demanding again. I'm not funding another one of Isabel's ventures. I said quietly. You've emptied Mom's savings. You drained Grandpa's trust. It's not going to be me next. The air changed. Isabel laughed, that brittle sound she uses when she's trying not to scream. Gregory didn't blink. He just said, You're being ungrateful. If we hadn't raised you, you'd be nowhere. I didn't argue. I just opened the door. You raised me to disappear. I just finally did. They left eventually. But I knew somehow that it wouldn't end there. I thought shutting the door would be the end of it. But control doesn't fade quietly. It rears back louder, more invasive. The envelope came the following Monday. My receptionist at the office. Julia handed it to me with trembling hands. Some man in a suit left it. He said you had to sign. I thanked her, barely registering the dread blooming in my chest. I opened it in the break room under flickering fluorescent lights and the hum of the vending machine. Petition for conservatorship. Based on allegations of mental incompetence. I read it twice. 3 times. It didn't change. They weren't just angry. They were trying to erase me. I sat down, the chair cold beneath me. The words blurred for a second, but my mind remained clear. They thought I'd crumble. What they didn't know was I'd been preparing for this kind of storm since I was 12. Growing up in Salem, silence was our native tongue. Gregory didn't believe in therapy or softness. Isabel could set the curtains on fire and be called artistic. I once got grounded for losing a spelling bee. Mom was too tired to intervene. I kept records, always audio files, screenshots, folders labeled gaslighting, manipulation, threats, voicemails with Gregory calling me fragile. Isabel screaming about a business loan I wouldn't co-sign. An email from Gregory. You wouldn't have survived without us, show some loyalty. Their control came dressed as family duty. But I had receipts. Back in my apartment, I opened my backup drives and clicked through years of digital scars. One by one, I dragged files into a shared folder and clicked send. Lucas answered my text instantly. You free to talk, I've got a situation, he replied. Video or phone, I can be there in 30. Lucas and I met at OSU debate team. He works cybersecurity now, but he always had a thing for justice, for digging until truth bled through. We video called first. His face came into view. Hoodie, tired eyes, sharp focus. What the hell did they serve you with? I showed him. Watched his expression change. They're trying to take over your finances. Based on what vibes, they say. I'm unstable, irrational. Isolated. Lucas raised an eyebrow. You're a structured introvert with boundaries. That's not mental illness, that's adulthood. He offered more than comfort. He offered tactics, file sorting, metadata validation, timestamp verification. He was in. Later that night, I stared at a photo on my shelf, Christmas years ago, Gregory's arm around Isabel. I was cropped out. The original was in a folder on my laptop, the full version, the truth. They built a house of lies and called it family. Fine. I would burn it down. But not with matches with evidence. Somewhere between the digital evidence and Lucas's encrypted spreadsheets, I realized the conservatorship wasn't the end game. It was a decoy, a smokescreen. The real objective, my inheritance. The clue came from an old photo album I'd retrieved from the attic in Salem during a cautious visit last winter, tucked between tax returns and Isabel's childhood drawings of unicorns, was a photograph dated 1994. Gregory smiling stiffly, my mother barely older than I am now, and next to her, a man I didn't recognize. His arm was around her, she was laughing. The back of the photo read, "Pamela, don't show Thomas, L. Pamela. My mother's younger sister, the one we were told had gone off the rails in her 20s and vanished. Turns out she hadn't vanished. She'd become a corporate attorney in Beaverton, the same woman I found on LinkedIn with our grandmother's maiden name. That afternoon, I took a drive south on I-5. The sky the same pewter gray as the day they served me papers. Rain etched lines on my windshield as I pulled into a brick building nestled behind a bank and a Vietnamese restaurant, McConnell Legal Group. No appointment, just a folder in my hand and a name on my tongue. The receptionist, a woman with dark curls and tired eyes, looked up. "Can I help you?" "I need to speak with Pamela McConnell. It's about Gregory Hayes." She stilled, studied me, then typed something into her computer. "Wait here." 10 minutes later, a door opened. She stepped out, sharp suit, silver gray hair pulled into a no-nonsense twist. Her face was composed, except for the flicker in her eyes, the kind of flicker that recognizes blood. "Ethan," she asked. I nodded. We sat in her office books, lining the shelves, certificates in glass frames, and I handed her the photo. She took it without a word. Her jaw clenched. "I didn't think she kept this," she murmured. "He told her to destroy everything." "Who is he?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she turned to her computer and clicked through a few folders. "Your mother and Gregory changed your birth certificate in 1995. I don't know why. But the man in that photo is Thomas Wren and Ethan. I think he's your biological father." I stared at her, heart barely steady. "I need to know for sure," I said. Pamela nodded. "If Thomas is your father, Gregory's conservatorship petition has no legal standing. They tied your finances to a family trust through that certificate. If it's falsified, their entire claim collapses." I pulled a swab kit from my bag. "Let's test." She smiled, thin and weary. "You're not your mother's son in one important way. You prepare." We did the test that afternoon. She offered to expedite it 1 week. In the meantime, I gave her access to everything: audio files, bank transfers, text threats from Isabel. "You have a solid case," she said, flipping through documents. "This is more than manipulation. It's a coordinated financial power grab." Her fingers paused on a printed message from Isabel dated 6 months ago. "If you won't pay for this, I'll find a way to get what's owed. You owe me, Ethan." Pamela highlighted the word "owed." "This is important. She's implying entitlement to your finances. We can use this." I left her office feeling both lighter and heavier. But I wasn't done. Next, I drove to Albany, a small city about 20 miles southeast, my destination. A modest, clean apartment complex, Nathan's place, Isabel's ex-boyfriend. He answered the door in a t-shirt and socks, a cautious look on his face. Behind him, I could hear a child's laugh, a little boy. "Hey," I said. "I know this is unexpected. I just need 5 minutes." "It's about Isabel." He stepped aside without a word. The apartment smelled like coffee and crayons. He gestured to the couch. "She tell you I was abusive?" he asked flatly. "No, she's telling people I'm unstable. Trying to take control of my finances." Nathan's eyebrows lifted. "That explains the lawyer letter I got last month." I blinked. "What?" "She wanted me to sign an affidavit saying you threatened her." My stomach twisted. "Did you?" He shook his head. "No, 'cause I have this." He walked over to a drawer and pulled out a USB drive. I didn't want to get involved. But you should have this Thanksgiving. 2 years ago, your dad, your sister saying you were dangerous. Isabel said, if you didn't comply, they had ways to handle you. I had a baby monitor recording, picked it up by accident. He handed it over like it was nothing. But it was everything. You understand, this might be evidence in court, I asked. Nathan nodded. Just keep me out of it if you can. I promised to try. That night, Lucas and I sat cross-legged in my apartment. We plugged in the USB and listened. Gregory's voice. He's always been off withdrawn. I'm not saying he's dangerous, but unstable. Probably. Isabel. He thinks he's better than us. That job, that apartment, it's going to his head. I say, we cut him down to size. Pamela joined us via Zoom. We sent her the file. She leaned back in her chair. They just handed us motive, character pattern, and intent. Then I showed her something else. An envelope I hadn't dared open since that day in Salem. It was addressed in handwriting I hadn't seen since childhood. Inside a letter, Ethan. If you're reading this, then they've come for you. I'm sorry I didn't do more. But I kept the truth in case you ever needed it. You were always stronger than they knew, Pamela. There was a second document folded behind it, a handwritten statement from Thomas, notarized, dated 2000. Gregory knows he's not Ethan's father. He made Natalie change the certificate. I tried to fight, but they threatened to disappear me too. I've kept my distance so Ethan could live, Pamela whispered. I didn't know he left that behind. The pieces were falling into place. The conservatorship just the beginning. The real betrayal ran deeper through forged bloodlines and silenced legacies. They tried to write me out of my own life, but they forgot who taught me how to document everything. Pamela told me not to expect fairness. This isn't about reconciliation, she said as she slid a thick packet across her desk. It's theater. Let them perform. You just stay grounded. The court-mandated mediation was scheduled for Friday morning at a neutral conference center just outside Salem. I'd barely slept the night before, too keyed up to rest. Not from fear, but from calculation. Because now I wasn't walking in defenseless. I had audio recordings, digital transfers, Gregory's manipulation in his own words, and pending confirmation DNA evidence that would detonate their entire scheme. The conference room was too bright, all sterile surfaces, an artificial calm. A carafe of coffee sat untouched in the middle of the long table. Gregory greeted me with a nod that could pass for polite. If you didn't know him. Isabel didn't look up from her phone. She wore a blazer, 2 sizes too big in perfume. I remembered from my graduation, an event she left early to attend someone else's fundraiser. The mediator was a composed woman in her 50s. She gave us all a professional smile before opening her leather-bound notebook. Let's begin, Gregory started. We're here because we're concerned about Ethan's mental state. His refusal to cooperate with his family, isolation, erratic decision-making. It's not like him. I said nothing, not yet. Isabel chimed in, overly sweet. We love Ethan, but he's changed ever since he moved to Portland. He doesn't answer calls. He's paranoid. I slid a printed bank statement across the table. This is from last year. Isabel opened a credit line under my name, transferred funds into an LLC she created. That LLC doesn't exist anymore. The mediator looked at it, brow furrowed. Gregory's expression barely flickered. That's out of context. I nodded. Here's the context. I laid down a series of screenshots and emails requests for money accusations, thinly veiled threats. I kept my voice calm, controlled. Pamela called it the burn-by-fact strategy. The mediator glanced up, Gregory. Did you co-sign this line of credit? He looked toward Isabel. We thought it was for a family project. You thought it was okay to steal? I asked softly. From me. Silence. Then I pulled out the flash drive from Nathan. Would you like to hear what concern sounds like? I handed it to the mediator, who plugged it into a laptop. The Thanksgiving recording filled the room. Isabel's voice. He thinks he's better than us. That job, that apartment, it's going to his head. I say, we cut him down to size. Gregory, we raised him. We can fix him. The mediator stopped the recording. The air was sharp with discomfort. Gregory cleared his throat. It's out of context. I smiled for the first time. It always is with you. Then I said something I hadn't rehearsed. You raised me to be silent. I learned to be compliant, so I wouldn't be cast out. But I've grown out of silence. I've grown out of this family mythology. Gregory's jaw tensed. Isabel. I continued, turning to her. Do you remember the time you hacked into my school portal to read my scholarship letter? Then told Mom I'd probably drop out because I wasn't cut out for college. She scoffed. That never happened. I handed her a printout, except it did. You sent yourself a copy from my account, and you forgot to delete the email from the sent folder. The mediator held up a hand. Let's take a break. I nodded and stepped outside. The air was cold, biting. I let it hit me. Let it remind me where I was now, free of the old house and the old rules. 5 minutes later, we resumed. Gregory leaned forward. Look, Ethan. We're just trying to help. You think we want control. We want you to be okay. I looked him dead in the eye. You filed a legal document claiming I'm mentally incompetent. You tried to gain control of my accounts. You lied about my diagnosis because there is none. There's no mental illness. There's no pattern of instability. There's just you, afraid that I've grown beyond your reach. I slid one last envelope across the table. Pamela requested a court-verified DNA test. The results are back tomorrow. But I already know what they'll say. Gregory didn't move. I finished. You forged my birth certificate in 1995. You listed yourself as my father, so I'd be legally tied to your family trust. But I'm not your son. You never treated me like one. Isabel stood up abruptly, chair screeching. This is garbage. The mediator stayed calm. Please, Miss Hayes. Isabel leaned over the table, face flushed. He's turning on us because he's bitter. Always has been, wants to destroy this family. I'm not bitter. I said I'm just done. The mediator called the session closed. The court will review this mediation record. Given the evidence, I suggest the petitioners consider withdrawal. As we left, Gregory grabbed my arm. You think you're better than us now. I met his stare. No, I've always been. He let go. I walked away. Back in the car, Pamela called. Mediator just emailed me. She said she's flagging the petition as likely fraudulent. That's rare good sign. I glanced at the passenger seat, full of files, photographs, transcripts. I don't want just a win, I said. I want the record to show they tried to erase me and failed. Pamela paused, then said quietly, the DNA confirmation comes in tomorrow. If it's what we expect, Gregory's claim disintegrates. I nodded, gripping the steering wheel. They started this war, I said. She answered, but you're the one in ending it. The courtroom felt colder than I expected. Maybe it was the marble, or maybe it was the weight of everything I brought with me, years of silence, digital receipts, and a truth they'd tried to bury. I sat at the respondents' table in the Multnomah County Courthouse, Pamela to my left, Lucas behind us with 2 laptops open. The Hayes family sat across the aisle like they were posing for a sympathy card, Gregory in a Navy suit, Isabel in something that probably cost more than her entire startup, and a lawyer named Carson Reed, polished and smug. Your Honor, Carson began. When the Hayes family seeks conservatorship of Mr. Ethan Hayes, citing emotional instability, irrational financial behavior, and concern for his mental health. The judge, Han Valerie Sinclair, a woman with iron-gray curls and sharper eyes, raised a brow. What medical documentation supports this claim? Gregory stiffened. There isn't any, Pamela said smoothly, because none exists. Carson scrambled. Your Honor, we have personal accounts. Gregory and Isabel have both witnessed outbursts, paranoia, even delusions. Pamela stood a quiet storm. We also have audio recordings, text messages, and financial statements that directly contradict these claims. She handed the bailiff a flash drive. The room hushed as Nathan's Thanksgiving recording played through the speakers. Isabel's voice spilled out first. He thinks he's better than us. That job, that apartment, it's going to his head. I say we cut him down to size. Then Gregory's, we raised him, we can fix him. The judge paused the playback. Is this your voice, Mr. Hayes? Gregory swallowed. It's out of context. Pamela didn't blink. We have 37 minutes of context. Your Honor, Isabel went red. Next, Savannah Lucas had tracked her down after we realized she'd once shared a joint bank account with Isabel. She testified via Zoom. Isabel used my name to open a $10,000 line of credit. When I found out, she said it was for a family business and that Gregory would make it go away. Judge Sinclair leaned forward. Did Mr. Hayes know about this? Savannah nodded. He signed the paperwork. Carson stammered. We dispute the validity of... Pamela cut in. We also have transaction logs showing that money went straight into Isabel's personal account. Not a business, not even a shell. Lucas stood. I traced it to a designer purse boutique and an event ticketing site. The judge raised a brow. That's one expensive startup. I sat silently through it all, letting the truth stack taller than any accusation they could throw. Then came the part I was waiting for. Pamela approached the bench with a sealed envelope. Your Honor, DNA results verified through court-approved labs confirming that Mr. Gregory Hayes is not Ethan's biological father. The courtroom stiffened. Isabel let out a shocked, what that was more performance than disbelief. Gregory just sat there, eyes forward. Pamela continued. In 1995, Mr. Hayes and Natalie Wren filed an amended birth certificate listing Gregory as the father. This was done to tie Ethan to a family trust. We have notarized statements indicating the falsification was intentional. The judge opened the results. Her face was unreadable. This invalidates Mr. Hayes' standing in this petition. You are not the respondent's legal guardian, nor his parent. Case dismissed. Carson muttered something, but Judge Sinclair cut him off. Furthermore, based on this evidence, I'm referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for further review of potential fraud, identity falsification, and financial misconduct. Pamela offered a small, respectful nod. Thank you, Your Honor. As the gavel fell, Gregory finally turned to me. His eyes were glassy, but not from remorse. This isn't over. I stood, buttoned my jacket, and said quietly, for you maybe not, for me it is. We stepped out into the Portland air, cool and alive. Lucas clapped me on the back. You just took down a dynasty built on gaslighting. Pamela handed me a folder, restitution estimates damages. The trust can no longer claim your assets. And there's a formal apology letter from the state for mishandling the initial filing. Later that week, I stood in front of a headstone in a quiet cemetery outside Corvallis. Thomas Wren, 1962-2008. I never knew him, but I knew what he tried to do. I placed a folded copy of the DNA results at the base of the stone. I'm sorry it took me this long. I wasn't alone. Pamela stood a few feet back with 2 coffees in hand. I owe him 2, she said softly. I started a scholarship, I told her, for kids raised invisible. In his name. She smiled. He would have been proud of that of you. Weeks passed. The media picked up bits of the court case, enough for distant cousins to message me with half-hearted apologies and Instagram reactions. I ignored most of them. But one day, in the grocery store parking lot, a familiar voice called out. It was Isabel standing next to her car. You happy now, she asked. No, I replied, but I'm finally free. Her face cracked for a second. I never wanted it to go this far. You did, I said. You just didn't think I'd fight back. She looked like she might say more. Then she got in her car and left. That night, Lucas came over with takeout. My apartment was filled with donation boxes, old trophies, photos, college sweatshirts I hadn't worn in years. You sure about letting it all go? He asked. I taped a box shut. It's not who I am anymore. He picked up my journal open on the desk. This title. Inheritance of Silence. You're writing it. I nodded. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclamation. He smiled. Then it's time you reclaimed your name too. I showed him the document Ethan Wren legally changed. No longer a footnote in the Hayes lineage. No longer their silent son. That was the final gift they never meant to give me clarity. And I took it fully, finally, for myself. Story 2. I should have known something was off when my mom cooked roast beef on a Wednesday. I'm Rachel, 30, and dinners at my parents' house have always been basic microwave meals. Canned corn, maybe pasta if they were feeling fancy. But that evening, the table was set like a Hallmark movie. And across from me sat my older brother Dylan, 33, and his wife Carly, the couple I seemed to be unintentionally bankrolling for the past decade. We ate like everything was normal, Dylan droned on about his latest project, a digital coin for pets or something equally ridiculous. Carly flashed her usual plastic smile and complimented the wine. I brought the one she'd later pack into her purse when she thought no one was watching. I should have left early. Instead, I stayed. And I'm glad I did, because what happened next changed everything. Midway through dinner, my mom folded her napkin, looked between me and my dad, then said, "They'll be moving into your house next month." No pause, no question mark, just a declaration like it had already been entered into law. I blinked. "I'm sorry," what I asked. "Well," she said, smiling. Like this was a good thing with Carly being pregnant and rent prices so high, it just makes sense. "Your house has space. 3 bedrooms, right? You can stay in the guest room or come home for a bit." My mouth was suddenly dry. My brain short-circuited. "My house," I repeated as calmly as I could. "Exactly." Dylan jumped in. "The nursery would be perfect in that room with the skylight." He meant my reading room. The one I spent months fixing up, sanding the floors, painting, finding just the right bookshelves. I looked at my dad. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "It's just practical," he muttered. "No sense in all that space going to waste." I sat there stunned, listening to them make plans with my life, with no input from me. It wasn't even an ask. It was a plan, one they had cooked up behind my back. But I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. Instead, I smiled. "Sounds good," I said as calmly as possible. "I'll start packing this weekend." Mom beamed. Carly clapped. Dylan looked smug. And I gotta work. Rewind a bit. I've always been the resilient one. That's what my mom liked to say. Not in a proud way. More like a convenient label for, we don't have to worry about her. Dylan was the golden child, failed businesses, maxed out credit cards, a DUI at 25. But somehow, he always had support, always had excuses. I, on the other hand, put myself through school, worked overtime to pay off my student loans, and bought a small 3-bedroom home at 28 after a promotion at my accounting firm. No co-signer, no family help, just me, and a stubborn drive to not be a burden. Over the years, I'd helped Dylan more times than I could count. $800 for car repairs, $2,000 for a down payment that never happened. I kept track, $14 in $70 in total. Not that anyone ever mentioned paying me back. I had boundaries, but they only worked when I enforced them. And for too long, I hadn't. The moment they tried to hand over my house to someone else without even asking, something inside me snapped. And for the first time, I snapped back, silently, methodically. The plan, I didn't argue. I didn't call them out. I simply pretended. I pretended I was getting the house ready. I asked Carly about crib colors. I texted my mom about moving dates. And the whole time, I was working in the background. 2 weeks earlier, I'd been offered a regional finance lead position in Seattle. A lateral move with a salary bump and housing support. I had turned it down out of loyalty, out of guilt. Now I called HR the next day. "Is the role still open?" I asked. It was. By the end of the week, I had signed the offer letter and booked a one-way flight. Then I called a real estate agent, not the family friend my mom liked, but a woman named Davina, highly reviewed, no personal ties. "I need to sell quickly," I told her. Confidentially. She understood. Within days, the photos were taken. The listing went live, and 3 offers came in. I took the cleanest one cash buyer, 21-day close. The timing was poetic. Meanwhile, I kept up the act. I let Carly visit the house to plan the nursery. She walked through my space like she already owned it, making comments about removing the built-in shelves, getting rid of the vegetable garden in the back because it didn't fit her aesthetic. Too earthy. I smiled and nodded. Good idea. I sold most of my furniture-packed essentials into a storage unit and forwarded my mail to a Seattle P.O. box. My parents still thought I was clearing space for the baby. By the time they were picking out paint samples, the house was already sold. Closing day was 2 days before Dylan and Carly were scheduled to move in, and I was gone. Moving day for them, not me. I imagine they pulled into the driveway with their truck ready to unload. Imagine their surprise when a couple they'd never met opened the door. "No, we bought this house last week," they would have said. From Rachel. I wasn't there to see it. I didn't want to be. Instead, I was 800 miles away, drinking coffee on my new balcony, watching the Seattle skyline glow in the morning haze. My phone lit up with missed calls, voicemails, from my mother, confused, then angry, then tearful. From my dad, call us back. From Dylan, pure rage. I didn't reply. I texted one thing. You said I didn't need that much space, so I made room. Good luck. Then I blocked their numbers. I thought the silence would last longer. They called nonstop for 2 days, then came the texts, then the emails, then messages through friends. I ignored them all. On day 4, my cousin Shannon sent me a screenshot, a post from my mom's Facebook. Our daughter Rachel has had a mental breakdown. Please keep our family in your prayers as we deal with this painful time. Sometimes the ones who seem the strongest are hurting the most. Right? A mental breakdown. That's what we're calling it now. Funny how selling your own house and moving for a better job is labeled unstable when it stops other people from taking advantage of you. Shannon texted, "Are you okay?" I know this isn't the whole story. I replied, "I'm fine. I just got tired of being used." She didn't say anything after that, but she didn't unfriend me either. Small blessings. Meanwhile, back at the wreckage, turns out Dylan and Carly weren't just planning to live in my house. They were depending on it. They had ended their lease a week early to save money, told their landlord they were buying property with family, moved all their stuff into a storage unit, and paid for 1 month only. When they showed up at their new home and realized they'd been cut out of the equation, panic set in. I didn't hear the full story until weeks later, but apparently they ended up crashing with my parents. Carly was 6 months pregnant, and they were sharing the guest room. Dylan tried to twist it into Rachel blindsided us, but that narrative didn't stick for long, especially after people started doing the math. My house had a pending sale on Zillow for over 2 weeks before move-in day. The photos were up. The sign was out. They just didn't look because they never imagined I'd say no. Why would I? I never had before. Dylan's meltdown. A mutual friend, Jamie, called me about 2 weeks after everything blew up. She'd stayed quiet until then, but curiosity got the best of her. "They're saying you sold the house out of spite," she said carefully. "I sold the house because it was mine," I replied. Jamie hesitated, then said, "Honestly, good for you." Apparently, Dylan had been making a scene at every family function, telling everyone I'd betrayed them, complaining that his pregnant wife was under so much stress and that Rachel always has to make things harder than they need to be. He left out the part where he was 33 jobless again and still couldn't explain what his latest business actually was. Something about subscription boxes for dog vitamins. My parents were trying to hold it together, but the cracks were showing. My mom called Shannon in tears. My dad had to postpone his retirement because they were helping cover Dylan's mounting credit card debt. As for me, I was settling into my new routine. New job, new apartment, new city. No drama, no freeloaders, no one rearranging my life behind my back. They tried one last thing. I thought they might let it go, maybe even realize why I left. But they didn't. Instead, I got a certified letter. They were asking if I would consider loaning Dylan and Carly $10,000 for a down payment on a new place. To get them out of my parents' house, as if I should be motivated by the chaos they created. The best part, they framed it as an opportunity for me to start healing and rebuild family trust. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. A quiet reprieve. 3 months in, I stopped checking my blocked list. My phone was quiet. My apartment in Seattle was small but sunlit. I'd walk to work with coffee in hand and feel something I hadn't felt in years, peace. At night, I cooked for one guilt-free. I decorated how I wanted. I hung art without asking for anyone's opinion. I even started therapy, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand why I'd let it go on for so long. Turns out, when you grow up as the responsible one, you internalize the belief that love is earned through usefulness, that your needs don't matter as much, that boundaries are selfish. It took walking away to realize none of that was true. The update. I didn't expect 5 months after I left, Carly gave birth to a baby girl. They named her Ray, short for Rachel. I laughed out loud when I found out. It felt like either the world's worst olive branch or a deeply ironic guilt trip. My cousin Shannon texted, "Guess they're not over you after all." I sent a gift anonymously, a box of diapers, a note signed for Ray. That was it. Not because I forgave them, but because that baby had done nothing wrong, and she deserved better than the mess she was born into. I didn't plan to ever go back. Seattle had become home. I liked the chill in the air, the people who didn't know my history, the way my name didn't come with 1,000 expectations. I was finally just Rachel, no longer the backup plan, the invisible support system, or the family bank account. Then one day in April, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It went to voicemail. I wasn't expecting much, but when I listened, the voice was shaky. "Hi, Rachel, it's Dad. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I get it. But I need to tell you something." I listened to the rest in silence. My mom had fallen and fractured her hip. The recovery wasn't going well. My dad sounded tired, scared, older than I remembered. He ended with, "I understand. If you don't call back, I just thought you should know." For 2 days, I didn't do anything. I walked to work like usual, cooked dinner like usual, sat by the window and drank tea while the city glowed like usual. But I wasn't at peace, not really. So I called back. A conversation. Long overdue. He answered on the second ring. There was a long pause before he spoke. "Rachel?" "Yeah," I said. Silence again. Then, "Thank you for calling. I didn't think you would." I didn't know what to say, so I just said the truth. "I'm not calling to come back, but I wanted to hear it from you. About Mom." He told me everything. The fall, the surgery, how they had no insurance that covered the rehab center Carly wanted, how Dylan was trying to help, but mostly just fighting with Carly and failing to keep a job again. And then he said something I didn't expect. "You were right to walk away." I blinked. "I see that now," he continued. "We leaned on you because we could. Because you never pushed back. That wasn't fair." I didn't say anything. I let it sit there, heavy and quiet. After a minute, I asked, "Why tell me that now?" He exhaled, "Because I don't want to leave this world with more regrets. Closure, not reconciliation." I flew home a week later. Not for a reunion, just to visit. I stayed in a hotel near the hospital. Walked in with coffee and a small bag of books for my mom. Nothing dramatic. She looked frail, smaller than I remembered. When she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. "Rachel?" I pulled up a chair. "Hi, Mom." She cried. Said she missed me. Asked why I had to disappear like that. And I said without anger, "Because you treated me like a safety net. Not a daughter." She didn't deny it, just nodded slowly, tears still running down her cheeks. I didn't know she whispered, "I thought you were okay." I was never okay. I said I was just quiet. We didn't fix everything. We didn't hug and promise to do better. But she apologized. For the first time in my life. And that was enough. Dylan, we didn't speak. I saw him once at the hospital cafeteria. He looked tired, grayer. He glanced at me, but didn't say anything. Carly wasn't with him. I heard they were taking a break. Maybe the weight of a baby and a failed fantasy life finally cracked whatever foundation they had. I didn't ask. I didn't need to know. Life goes on. I went back to Seattle the next day. My company had offered me a new role, international liaison for our Europe clients. It came with a move to Amsterdam. At first, I hesitated. But now, it felt like the right kind of distance. I accepted. Before I left, I boxed up everything from my Seattle apartment, mailed what I didn't need, donated what I'd outgrown. On my last night in the city, I sat on my balcony and watched the sun set behind the Space Needle. I thought about that dinner, about the way they handed me over like property, about the way I smiled through it, about the moment I chose not to explode, but to exit, and how that quiet decision gave me back everything they'd taken for years, my voice, my boundaries, my future. Epilogue. I never moved back. I never sent money. I never played the role again, but I did something I hadn't done before I gave myself permission to build a life without them at the center. I still get updates through Shannon Mom's recovering. Dylan's moved in with Carly's parents. The baby's doing well. She's walking now. Her name is still Ray, and every now and then I wonder if she'll grow up knowing the full story. Maybe she will. Maybe she won't. But if she ever finds out about the woman she's named after, I hope she hears the truth. That I wasn't angry, that I didn't slam doors, that I just chose peace. And for once, peace chose me back. Story 3. I'm Ben, 34. For most of my adult life, I was the backbone of my father's company, Hartley Plumbing and Heating. I didn't go to college. I didn't move away. I stayed and helped build something. What I thought was a family legacy. Turns out I was just free labor with a convenient last name. 15 years. That's how long I worked side by side with my dad, Mark, to grow his tiny one-man plumbing gig into a thriving operation. With over a dozen employees and a fleet of trucks, I was there in snowstorms, crawling through flooded basements, answering 2 a.m. emergency calls when no one else would pick up. I thought that meant something. I thought I was next in line. I thought being reliable would eventually translate into respect. But none of that mattered the day my younger brother Jake got the new company truck. He's 29. Only joined the business 5 years ago, and he treats it like a part-time internship and shows up late, leaves early. Doesn't answer his phone on weekends. Cleaned up more of his mistakes than I care to admit. Leaky installations, missed appointments, botched estimates, and still somehow, he was always the future of the company in Dad's eyes. I didn't see the truck moment coming, not like that. It happened on a Sunday at family dinner. Dad stood up beaming like it was Christmas morning, holding out a shiny new set of keys with the company logo on the tag. "Jake," he said, "this is yours now. For you and Maddie, consider it our engagement gift." I swear the room actually clapped. Maddie squealed and kissed him. My mom teared up. I just sat there trying to figure out if this was a joke. It wasn't. Dad looked at me afterward and said, "Don't worry, Ben. You're the kind of guy who can keep that old truck going forever." Like that was a compliment. A lifetime of not quite. This wasn't about the truck. The truck was just the final straw. I'd spent over a decade being promised things that I'd become a partner. That once Dad stepped back, the business would be mine to run. That I'd have a stake in the decisions I was already making anyway. Those promises never materialized. What did materialize? Jake getting credit for my ideas. Jake getting paid more. Jake getting promoted on paper while I did the real work. When I installed a new CRM system that reduced scheduling mistakes by 40%, Dad said it was Jake's support that made it possible. Because Jake had mentioned we needed something better. When I proposed commercial contracts, Dad called it risky. 6 months later, Jake made the same suggestion. And suddenly, it was forward thinking. When I found out Jake was making over $25K or more than me for fewer hours and less responsibility, I knew what the truth was. Loyalty didn't matter. Consistency didn't matter. 15 years of building a company from scratch meant nothing next to 5 years of being the golden child. The night I decided, that same night after dinner, I was alone in the garage. My old work truck, 12 years old, rusting at the wheel, Wells back end, sagging under worn-out shocks, was dripping coolant again. Dad walked in, beer in hand, and tried to reminisce. "Remember when you were 12 and I taught you to fix the serpentine belt on the old Ford?" He said, grinning. "You had the steadiest hands I'd ever seen on a kid." I nodded. And for a moment, I almost forgot what had just happened. Then he said, "You're the glue that holds this place together." But that's all I was to him. Glue invisible until it stops working. He left me there in that garage staring at the busted truck. I was somehow expected to keep driving while Jake rode off in something I picked out, researched, and helped finance for the business. That night, I didn't rage. I didn't yell. I didn't even talk to anyone about it. I opened my laptop, searched local job boards, and started planning my exit. The plan. The next day, I called Ryan, a guy I used to work with, who now led the commercial plumbing team at a company across town, Summit Mechanical. We grabbed lunch. I told him I was thinking of making a move. He didn't hesitate. "Ben, if you're serious, we'll take you tomorrow. You've got the rep, you've got the skill. We've got a leadership role sitting empty." It was the kind of job I'd been asking my dad for the past 3 years. That afternoon, I sent Summit my resume. 2 days later, I had an offer in hand, 40% more pay, full benefits, bonus structure, and a path to partnership in 2 years. I didn't rush my notice. I spent a week documenting everything I did. Client contacts, maintenance logs, billing notes, even passwords and vendor codes I labeled. Every folder wrote instructions, made backups. I wasn't going to sabotage anything. That's not who I am. But I also wasn't going to stay. I walked into the office Monday morning, laid a sealed envelope on Dad's desk, and waited for him to read it. His face went from confused to annoyed to panicked in about 15 seconds. "You're leaving?" he asked. "Is this about the truck?" "It's about everything," I said, calm and direct. "Broken promises, being overlooked, not being treated like I matter." "You've always mattered," he said. "No," I replied. "I've always been useful. There's a difference." Fallout begins. The news hit harder than I expected. Jake cornered me in the supply room 3 days later. "You can't just leave," he hissed. "Who's going to handle the West End schools? The hospital." I just shrugged. "I'm sure you'll figure it out," I said. "You've got the truck." 2 weeks later, I was gone. My last day came and went without fanfare. I turned in the old Truck Keys Company phone access codes I even left behind. A full binder labeled Operations Manual. B. Hartley inside were instructions for everything from vendor accounts to emergency call protocols, 15 years of experience condensed into one place. Dad didn't say much. He still thought I'd be back in a month, maybe 2. Thought I'd get tired, miss the routine, realize I made a mistake. What he didn't understand, what he never wanted to understand, was that I didn't leave over a truck. I left because I finally saw myself clearly without the shadow of their expectations dimming my worth. My first month away Summit Mechanical felt like stepping into a different world. Clean systems, organized job sites, people who showed up on time and actually listened. My new boss, Natalie, introduced me to the team like this. "This is Ben Hartley. He ran half his dad's company for over a decade. He's here to build something real with us." I got business cards, my own schedule, a raise that made my old salary look like a joke. When I suggested we revamp the commercial maintenance tracking, and they didn't think about it, and they gave me the green light. I built a new scheduling system from scratch. 2 weeks later, we landed a contract with Red Ridge Apartments, our first large-scale housing deal. It was quiet success. No drama, just being seen, heard, respected. For the first time in years, I was sleeping through the night. Back at Hartley Plumbing, I didn't check in, didn't call. But the updates found me. This is a small industry, and people talk. 3 weeks after I left, a supplier I'd worked with for years stopped by Summit to drop off inventory. "You hear about Hartley Plumbing?" he asked casually. They missed a couple appointments, clients getting nervous. I just nodded. A week later, I got a message from Eli, a tech who used to work under me. "Hey, just a heads up. Travis tried to fix a boiler at Crestview Hospital. Didn't close a valve, flooded half the basement. That contract was worth over $150K a year. One mistake, and it was gone. Not long after Eli quit, said the place was chaos without me. Scheduling was a mess. No leadership, no plan. I didn't feel smug. I felt sad. 15 years building something, and it took less than 1 month for it to start falling apart. The messages start. At first, I ignored them. "Hey, can you remind me where the Peterson records are stored? What did you use for waterline compliance reports?" Then they got more urgent. "We're having issues with the Wilson Apartments contract. Any chance you can help? Your dad's in over his head." I answered the basics, where to find files, how to access shared drives, but that was it. No fixing things, no coming back. The thing about walking away is once you do it for the right reasons, you don't have to keep reopening the door. The collapse speeds up. By the second month, word had spread. Hartley Plumbing had lost 4 big contracts. One of the new guys misread a gas line diagram and triggered a partial evacuation. They lost the school maintenance deal after missing 2 safety inspections. Clients who used to call and ask for me were finding other companies. People were starting to realize what my dad had taken for granted. Jake especially. He sent a text that caught me off guard. "I'm drowning here. I didn't know how much you were handling." For a minute, I considered calling him, but I didn't. Because if someone's only sorry when they're losing, it's not real regret, it's survival. A surprise visit. On a Thursday evening, I stopped by a hardware supply store after work. Just as I was walking to my truck, my own truck bought with my own money, I heard my name. Jake. He looked rough. Pale hair, messy circles under his eyes. He walked up slowly. "I don't expect you to talk to me," he said, "but I needed to say it. You were right. I didn't take any of it seriously. I thought you were just being a martyr, but now," he paused, looked down, "it's different when it's all on you." I didn't say much, just nodded. Then he asked the question I knew was coming. "Would you ever come back?" I didn't even need to think. "No," I said quietly. "I'm finally in a place that values what I bring. I won't give that up again." He nodded like he knew that would be the answer. "Still," he said, voice low, "I'm sorry." And I believed him. Maybe for the first time ever. Meanwhile, at Summit work was steady. My ideas were working, clients were happy. Then came a contract I hadn't expected. Fairhaven Logistics won of the Big Fish Summit, had bid 3 times before and lost. Natalie asked me to look over the proposal. I realized I'd done years of work on their old heating systems. I could have told her exactly what the old company had missed. But I didn't. Instead, I rewrote our bid based on industry best practices, not insider info. She noticed. "You didn't use any of what you knew, did you?" she asked. "No," I said, "didn't feel right." She smiled. "That's why I hired you. We got the contract anyway." End of the line. A few weeks later, I got a call from my mom. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Her voice was quiet, tired. "Ben, your father's thinking of retiring. Things aren't good. They've sold 2 trucks, laid off 4 guys. He asked if you'd meet him." I said I'd think about it. The next week, we met at a diner, halfway between our places, neutral ground. He looked older. His confidence was cracked, and when he spoke, it wasn't like before. "I was wrong," he said about a lot. I let him talk. He asked if I'd take over the company, offered me a partnership, full control. I listened. Then I said, "I've got my own thing now. It's going well. I'm not coming back." He nodded slowly. "Can't blame you." That was it. No yelling, no guilt. Just quiet understanding. Some people wait years for an apology they never get. I got mine. And still I didn't go back. Not because I was bitter, but because I was finally free. It's a strange thing, freedom. At first, it feels like quiet, like breathing air you didn't know you'd been holding in for years, like standing in your own space without anyone rearranging your future for you. That's what my life at Summit Mechanical became. Each week felt like healing, not the dramatic kind, just small, steady changes. I was getting home before dinner, spending time with people who liked me for who I was not, for what I could fix. I wasn't carrying the weight of an entire business on my back anymore. No more 2 a.m. calls. No more covering for Jake. No more wondering if this would be the year Dad followed through on his promises. Just peace. The offer. A few months into my new role, Natalie called me into her office. She didn't waste time. "We're opening a second branch across the river," she said. "I want you to run it." I blinked. "You'd be the operations lead," she continued. "Build your team, shape the client list. If it works out like I think it will, I'd like you to buy into the business within 3 years. I didn't say yes right away. Not because I didn't want it, but because I knew what it meant, and this was real mine. A few days later, I said yes. Meanwhile, back at Hartley Plumbing, I didn't check in, but people talked. Hartley Plumbing scaled down hard. They were down to 2 trucks. One of them was the old rust bucket I'd left behind. Jake was handling most of the calls himself. Word was he'd actually gotten better, forced to learn the things he used to avoid. Dad was mostly retired now, working out of the house, trying to keep the books straight. Still stubborn, but quieter. They lost most of their commercial clients, but a few of the residential ones stuck around, probably out of habit more than anything else. They weren't failing anymore, but they weren't growing either. I felt neutral. That's how I knew I'd moved on. Family. After the storm. Family gatherings were awkward for a while. Then they were just different. Less talking about work, more talking about normal things. Weather movies, Jake's kid born that winter, a little boy named Owen. Mom tried once or twice to bring up how things used to be. I didn't bite. I'd lived that chapter. I didn't need to reread it. Jake and I were civil. He stopped posturing, started asking questions instead. Technical ones, business ones. Sometimes I'd answer, sometimes I wouldn't. Depends on the day. But there was no anger anymore. I wasn't trying to prove anything. The house and the truck. 6 months after I took over the second Summit branch, I bought a small house just outside of town. Nothing flashy, just mine. I also bought a new truck. Not for the company, for me. Black extended cab paid for in full. I didn't post about it, didn't show it off. But every time I sat behind that wheel, I remembered what it felt like the first time they handed Jake the keys to a truck I built. I thought I'd never recover from that. Turns out all it took was stepping out of the shadows and building my own light. A letter one afternoon. Maybe a year after I left, I found a handwritten envelope in my mailbox. It was from Dad. It wasn't long, just a page. Ben, you were right. About everything I treated you like a given. Like you'd always be there. That was a failure on my part. Not yours. I'm proud of you. I always was. I just didn't know how to show it until it was too late. Whatever happens with the business, I hope you know you built the best of it. Love, Dad. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. Didn't cry, didn't smile. Just sat quietly for a while. Then I went back to work. Full circle. The new branch is doing well. We've hired 2 apprentices. I teach them the way. I was never taught by someone who values what they bring, not who they're related to. One of them asked me recently, "How'd you get this far?" I thought about it. About the late nights, the broken promises, the rusted-out truck, and the keys I never got. And I said, I stopped waiting for someone else to give me a future. I went out and built one. Final thoughts. You don't always get justice in the way you think. Sometimes it's not about payback, not about making people hurt the way they hurt you. Sometimes it's simply this waking up in the morning, looking around at the life you created, and knowing deep in your bones that you were never the problem. You were just too valuable to be seen by people who didn't know what value looked like, and now they do. Because you're gone.